My grandpa was one, he always said you never want to be the first one to get something, but you want to be the second or the third one. He says if you're the last one, then you're behind time. Like it's My grandpa was one, he always said you never want to be the first one to get something, but you want to be the second or the third one. He says if you're the last one, then you're behind time. Like it's turned out, the Vector, we thought it would be good, but we didn't realize it would be this good. Like it's been an incredible investment. Hi there, I'm Weldon Plett from sunny Glade Farms, Bloominort, Manitoba, Canada. The last 15 years of dairying before robots, it was just go, go, go. Get this done, get that done. There was very little time to enjoy your cows. Now with the robots, I can actually go in there and I can look at my cows, I can pet my cows, I can interact with my cows, and there's time for it. Before, we were milking a tie stall, and I guess we felt that we knew our cows, we knew where they stood, we knew what each cow was all about, or we thought we did. And I guess moving into automation and all that, we thought we would lose that personal touch. Really, we know our cows much better now than we ever have. There's well over 100 pieces of information we get every time the cow enters the robot. We know how much milk she gives, what her butter fat is, what her protein is, what her cell count is, the temperature of her milk. Has she been active? Has she not been active? Is her stomach working with the rumination tags? It's just unbelievable the amount of information that we get now. Like we thought we used to know our cows, and now we found out we didn't really know them at all before. Like it's just unreal how relaxed they are, and again, that relaxed cows just give more milk. Our butter fat usually is at 3.8 with a protein of 3.3 roughly, milking it at 32 to 33 liters per cow right now at 220 days of milk. Our somatic cell, we've been as low as 85,000. We're generally running in that 100 to 200 range. We sort off our high cell count cows, get sorted off to the pasteurizer for milk for the calves, so that helps on the cell count end of things too. The Vector measures the bunk and feeds according to as needed. So whenever it comes by, you notice the cows get up and head to the feed bunk. So it definitely encourages more intake, which at the end of the day means healthier cows, higher components, and more milk. We used to feed for 5% over. Now we don't really clean out bunks anymore. It mixes the fresh feed with what's left. It's been an incredible savings on the feed side that you don't have to overfeed all the time. Now we milk more cows than we ever have. We've cut our labor force in half, and it's also easier labor. It's not as physical as what it used to be. And we're producing more milk.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dan Schreiner. I'm from Lely, North America. Just like to say thank you very much for coming this afternoon to our virtual farm tour. We're very excited this year to host the Plett family. Great family that's just been a pleasure to work with all of them, and they have a great story to tell today. And if you have any questions along the way, please ask them, and hopefully we can save a little more of them from the end. But if you have a question along the way, raise your hand and we can address it. I'd like to start off by introducing Weldon Plett. And Weldon is going to do a way better job at introducing the rest of the family to you, so I'm going to hand over the mic to Weldon.
Okay, thank you for coming. We're excited to be here. It's been a long haul for us from where we started, but I'll start with introducing my wife Angela, and my mom and dad Menno and Jesse. We're the four of us are the ones that can sign checks on our farm. So. And we have all of our children here except one today. And we'll start with Nicole. She's our oldest daughter, and her husband John. They have done a lot of cleaning. As we have tours so often, we need janitors, so they've helped with us. Nicole works in town, and John is in his last year of teaching. Adam is next in line here. He's actually not the oldest boy, but the second one, but he was next in the line here. So. He is actually a technician at the New Holland dealer in town, but he had a little bit of a dirt bike mishap here about a month ago, so he's off work. So it's been very handy truck driver doing corn silage and helping out there. So and he's actually started taking care of the calves now while he's off work. So it's very handy. And then our youngest son Joseph, he's in grade 8. He pitches in. Next one is Jeremy. He's kind of our computer techie on the place. He works with me very closely on the cow end of things. His wife Michelle is also in teacher college, and she couldn't make it due to teaching and classes and stuff like that. So, and then Benjamin, he's our equipment guy. He does the blocks and heifer barn bedding and stuff like that, kind of the yard jock. So that's our family. Maybe one of the most enjoyable things about switching to the robot thing has been we have been able to become a family farm again. We have one employee who I should mention now, Peter Klippenstein. He's been with us for 11 years already, and he'll do anything for us, and he's taking care of the shop at home while we're here. So he told me, we talked about it, I tried to line up things for him. He doesn't really do the robot stuff, but I said, if you need anything, just call and we'll help you. So last night we did have a little bit of an issue, and I think Jeremy walked him through it, no problem. So, okay, this is where we start, where our story kind of starts today. Actually, I should step back. My grandpa moved to this farm in the 40s, and my dad took it over from him, and now I'm involved as well. So, May 4th, 2013, something happened at our place that it's not fun. And I'll be honest and upfront with you guys, if we hadn't had this, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have rebuilt yet. It was something we often talked about, that we wanted to switch to robots, but I guess this fire fast-forwarded it a lot quicker than we had anticipated. We lost our entire milking setup. We had a 104 cow tie stall, and we had a free stall on the side where we actually already had one Lely robot, and we managed to save the cows in the freestall barn. There was, I think, 50 some cows in there that we saved, and we lost everything in the tie stall. I guess one thing, and I'll maybe put that in here, is with the fire we had really good insurance that for the most part went well. Income loss took forever, so you need a very good banker. We have an incredible banker. They really stood by us. If we would need more cash, I would phone and say that, got to pay bills. And the one thing we found is that insurance was really good on the buildings and stuff like that. That's pretty straightforward, but it's the income loss that they like to fight about, and we actually still haven't got our final money back from insurance yet. So I'm hoping that'll come any day. But back to the more interesting stuff. The boys mentioned the day after the fire, they said, Dad, if we don't want to build with robots, we don't need to bother building again. And so at our place, that was kind of from the moment of the fire forward, we knew this is the direction we were heading. And with Penner Farm Service being 2 miles down the road, that's our Lely Center, it was a pretty easy decision to go that route. And the Lely team has been incredible to work with. So this is the beginning of it here. We completely rebuilt, and when you completely rebuild, you have to think of so many things. You have to think of, what am I going to do with my cull cows? Where am I going to calve cows? Where am I going to do an LDA? It's because everything is gone. You have no old barn to put cows in. You have nothing there. So you have to. It takes a lot of planning and a lot of thinking to come to a facility that you actually hopefully you can be happy in down the road. So we built a freestall barn. It's an 8-row barn with four Lely robots in that barn. It's about 250 by 175 feet wide, roughly. With we run Pat scrapers, and everything is LED lighting in there. We run the 4 robots, and I guess we do one unique thing at our place that not a lot of guys do, is we feed high moisture corn in the robots, and it seems to be working well. We've been on it now for a month and a half. The visits have gone through the roof. The cows just love high moisture corn, and it's just incredible to. While me and Jeremy were actually calibrating the robots, we had filled up the bins. We filled up the bins, and while we were calibrating robots, there was already cows swarming around there. They loved the smell of high moisture corn. They wanted to get at it. So definitely the visits have improved since the first year we fed just a dairy just a robot ration, and then we switched to high moisture corn now in July. This is the front. This is the front of the barn here. This was a picture taken on an open house. We have the milk house kind of in the middle here, and then on our right hand side, we built a brand new calf facility as well. We have the Lely comb feeder, and we really it fits the robotic milking thing very well. When you switch to robots, your schedule changes completely. We actually, I would say, we struggled with routine at first. When you milk in a parlor or in a tie stall or whatever, your whole life is driven by milking times. Even if you're not milking, it's either it's milking time or somebody's milking. So your whole farm is geared around milking time. And now you're milking 24 hours a day. So it's kind of a strange feeling. You get up in the morning, you go to the barn, okay, now what do we do? Because we're used to in the morning you'd always be 5 minutes late and you had to get the milkers going and you had to start milking, and now while that's going. So you kind of, it was a struggle to get routine going, and in some ways maybe after a year and a bit we still haven't quite figured out how we want to all do it. But we were down for a year and a bit, and while we were rebuilding, and so that was one of the things that we took a bit to get going on that one. Okay, we're milking about 200 cows. We're pretty high percentage first calf heifers because we lost a good chunk of our herd, and we're averaging in that 71 to 73 pounds, and we're averaging about, I think, around 3.2 to 3.5 milkings per cow per day. In our barn, we built our dry cow facility right in the barn, and so we have our dry cows and our close-up cows in the main barn as well. We grow all our own feed. Crop about 750 acres that supplies our feed. Okay, so this is just a rundown here. The 4 robots. When we have the cell counters and we feed high moisture corn. Okay, now just for those of you that don't, the high moisture corn is fed separate. We had to build separate boxes for feeding high moisture corn. They don't run through the robot, so we actually feed high moisture corn through a side feeder that the robot activates, and then we feed roasted beans through the A4 dispenser. We have 2 foot baths, 2 Lely foot baths, 1 on each side. The barn is split in half. The foot baths work. We really like them. The challenge you have in a robot barn is when your cows come off the robot, there's nobody pushing her. Like if your cows come out of the parlor, there's usually 12 or 14 or whatever you have. They're going, so the cow's got to keep going through the robot or through the foot bath. Whereas here it's 1 cow at a time, and then, so that cow will often end up, she can maybe stand there for 5 minutes till the next one comes. So it takes more chemical, but I think we want to try to close off the foot bath so that there's no light in there, so that they won't want to stand in there. We have sort gates off of there. We got cow brushes. We have a Lely comb calf feeder, which really suits the robot farm well, especially because you're not there on the 8-hour intervals to feed calves. That feeds calves all the time. For us, we've never raised calves as nice as we have now with the Lely comb. We feed the cows are on a 40 fit program, it's called, with that gives the first 40 days they can drink as much milk as they want. I've seen them as high as 15 and 16 liters, so that's what, 3-4 gallons roughly. But usually we'd be in that about 11 liters per calf per day. We have the Lely Vector with the kitchen, and then we also have high moisture. We have 2 silos, harvester silos. One is for high moisture corn, and the other one we have our second cut haylage in there, which we might actually eventually switch over to corn silage simply because in summer it's the corn is a bit more of a challenge in the feed kitchen than haylage. You can store in the kitchen probably for 2 or 3 weeks and it wouldn't go bad, but corn you have to be a little bit more careful. And then the boys also put in that we got 4 free Lely jackets or windbreakers along with it as well. So. Okay, we got water beds. We love our water beds. They seem to work really well. They're very, I would say, they're very low. Our labor for maintaining our stalls is very low. We go around twice a day cleaning stalls. We bed them roughly once a week, lightly, and it seems to work well. We have tunnel ventilation for summer, as you see the pictures of the barn with the big fans going in the back, and it works really, really well. Is that the last one? Is there one more yet? The thing, I guess, what we've really enjoyed about the barn is exactly the Vector and high moisture. The Vector has been an incredible investment for us. We were kind of skeptical of it at first. In fact, Rich, after the fire, I don't know, a couple weeks after the fire, Rich called me and asked me if we wanted to go to Ontario to look at the Vector. I said, no, I wasn't interested in that. I had worked enough with conveyors and shit like that when I was young. Ended up fixing conveyors and stuff like that, and I didn't really enjoy it, and I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. But then a competitor, a good friend of mine, came to me and said, Weldon, I want to take you to Quebec and show you our automatic feeding system. I said, no, we're not interested. He says, no, I want to take you. You don't have to, no obligation to buy it at all. But I want to take you and I want to show you our feeding system. And so when we were on tour, we saw, at that point, we saw the competitor system. And the boys kind of gave me the gears a little bit and said, Dad, what's your problem? Like, you think the robot can milk the cows, but you can't feed the cows? And it got me thinking, and one thing that we just really felt is how it complements the robots. The Vector just really complements the robots. It really adds to that relaxed. There's no big rush to the feed bunk. There's no, like, it's just a calm, quiet barn. And we all know that cows do best when they're relaxed and quiet. And that just works the best. So when we got home from that Quebec tour, I phoned Rich. I says, Rich, could we still grab that offer? So Rich took us to Ontario, and we decided to go with the Vector, and it works incredible. Like the only downtime we have is when we fill up the kitchen and we forget to tell the computer that we filled it up. Then you'll get phone calls at night. So no, it is a very good system, and as far as downtime, that's very little. A couple of things that everybody always asks you, what would you do different? I think we maybe built our dry cow area a bit too small. And then when I talk about too small, I would say the alleys and stuff like that I think are a bit too small in the dry cow area. The stalls are fine. It's just that we crunched it a bit, and because with the fire we have these slugs coming, so it's kind of hard to say at this point where some of these things are at. And then our calf barn, we ran 70% heifers the first year after the fire, so we were kind of packed there. I don't know that, whatever. That's how it goes, I guess, right? We didn't, and that was not even using sex semen. But again, I thought we had figured it all right. But that's how it goes. When you build, you got to go with something. And I guess one thing I've started thinking of with our dry cow area is down the road is to maybe put in another robot to milk fresh cows and use that area for that. I think milking fresh cows takes time in the robot, and I think to have a robot designated to milk just fresh cows and to be able to house those cows separate for the first month probably would be to our benefit. So that's something that like as a farmer, you're always dreaming and always thinking, what would I do next and what would I do different? And those are just some of the things there. So I think that's about the end of that one, eh? Okay, our goals. I feel with the setup that we built, we need to be 85 to 100 pound average. If we can't do that with our system, once we get our cow flow properly and milking a good group of second and third calvers, if we can't be up there, then we're not doing our job. Because we've got the feed is there, we've got the facility, cow comfort is there. We often refer to, we got a 5-star facility. We built a 5-star facility with child care. So we love our barn. Maybe not everybody would do it the way we did, but that's the privilege we have as farmers, is we can do things the way we want to do them. One thing I would encourage, if you're in a situation where you're looking at building something, go to see farms, as many as you can. And even go to a barn that you say, I don't like that barn. That's the important one to go to make sure that you see what you don't, because it's just as important to see what you don't want as it is to see what you want. So spend a lot of time, and we did. We toured a lot of barns. We saw a lot of different, and we took a little bit here and a little bit there, and that's how we came up with what worked. And then eventually you get to the point where it gets really difficult is once you have to start deciding, okay, if I take this, then I can't have that. And then that's where it gets complicated. And you work your way through it, and then eventually one day you say, okay, this is what we're doing. So, and then another one that is we want to feed as much of our own as we can, which we saw with the high moisture corn and stuff like that. That saves us a lot of cash flow, feeding our own corn. We used to buy dairy ration, and we would haul our corn to the mill, and they would haul it back, and we would pay for it all. So now we feed our own corn, and it's really nice when you write out checks at the end of the month. And then the other thing is we lost a good chunk of our herd, and that'll be a bit of a haul to get that back to where. But we've bought some good cows. We do some embryo work, and we want to build a herd that's healthy and gives us a lot of milk. Questions?
All right. So, does anybody want to start out with the first question for the day? Nothing? Anybody? Oh, there we go.
I noticed with that vector feeder, what do you do with feed refusals, or don't you have any?
With the vector, that's part of the beauty of the vector. If you see the way it works, it's always pushing up, and we actually have literally almost no feed refusal. But we do, what happens is it pushes it, because of the way it pushes to the end. So we'll probably, maybe once a week, we'll go with the skid steer at the end of the bunk and scoop up some dry corn stuff or whatever stays behind. Like, it's amazing when you start doing the math. I mean, we used to, our nutritionist would suggest to feed 5% over so that you knew that they got enough feed, right? Well, here with the vector, every time it goes by, it reads the bunks. So if your intake goes up, it just feeds more often, because every time, we have it going out every 45 minutes. It scans all the bunks, and it will go back and feed, and then you have them on priority, so the milk cows get first priority. And but as far as the refusals go, we have very little refusals.
Okay. Next question.
How does that system working in the extreme cold weathers we've had the last few years? Is there any freeze ups, breakdowns, slowdowns? How's it handling the cold, extreme cold? Or did you have extreme cold where you're from?
Yeah, we have extreme cold. We have our feed kitchen. Our feed kitchen is insulated. At first we were thinking that was one we debated, and our old feed room was never insulated, and I always swore I'd never build another feed room that wasn't insulated. And so we insulated our feed room, and we actually only go when it's minus 35 outside. We're probably -2, -3 in the feed kitchen. So we haven't really experienced any freeze up. When we open the door, when we fill up, we have a full-length door. I don't know if it showed it in pictures anywhere. We have a full-length door. Like, our feed kitchen is 70 feet wide, roughly. And we have a full-length door. So when we open it, and Ben fills it up, by the time he's done, it's probably -30 in there. But by the next morning, we're back to -2. So the feed generates heat, and no, that hasn't been an issue at all. But we don't run outside. Like, we're completely under a roof. We don't run outside. We don't. We were debating about running it to our heifer barn. At first, the plan was we would, but we wouldn't do it right away. And now we've kind of got to the point where we're thinking, you know what, it's too valuable in the barn to have it running outside.
There is another vector in the same area as us, and they have it in a colder space. And what they've had is a couple of the bearings in the grabber were not built for the temperatures that we get in Manitoba. And so what they did is they had a heavier grease in it, so they just gave I just swapped up the grease inside the bearings, and then it worked fine again. So they've seen it in the minus 35s, minus 40s, and it's held up really well. They've just done a couple like small modifications like that where you have a lighter grease that doesn't gum up as easy.
And I think we have the laser option, and I think there's a photo option where if you have with fog would be an issue, but we have to run the laser like our grabber runs off laser, and it works fine.
Even though you start out with heifers, it might be a little different, but like say, would you rate your startup as far as getting them initially flowing through? Anything you would do different or advise people having looked back on it?
Dry up, I would start up with drying up anything over 250 days. What we did is we moved a bunch of cows back from my cousin's milk cows for us, and I actually just left anything over 250 days, I just left them at his place. I said milk them till they're dry, because I knew they would dry up at our place anyways. But hire lots of help, buy lots of Pete's on Pepsi. And you got to figure on being there 3 or 4 days. But really it was, actually I would say looking back it was a breeze. I don't know what you guys would want to comment to it.
Yeah, it was actually, we had started up a robot about a year before that, so we had a really good idea of what it was going to look like. But actually, I would say the vector was really helpful in starting up because the cows were all used to barns where they would get twice a day feeding. And so every time the vector came by, they all ran to the bunk and just ate. So our intakes were just way up, and that really kept the milk flowing, even though there was a little bit more stress of them being in a new barn. They were still eating lots, and our intakes were high, and our ruminations were really good. So I would say that was actually a huge benefit in having. We had a very smooth startup. Our milk production at our startup was almost better than it was 3 or 4 weeks after, once we stopped pushing the cows all the time, just because they were so excited about everything. They were going like crazy.
Yeah, and one thing with A4 with the straight flow through, I don't know how many of you guys have run beef cattle through chutes and stuff like that. Like the A4 startup is very, very easy. If nothing else, you get the guy to open the front gate and the cow follows through. There's none of this side stuff. That eye flow is incredible. I've often thought, the first when I saw robots, I was thinking, okay, where are these guys obviously never chased beef cows around in their life? We used to have 250 red Angus beef cows as well, and with the whole BSE thing in 03, we got out of that. But cow flow through the A4 robot is incredible. And I remember when our neighbors started A3s, and they kind of warned us how bad this would be. The startup, you'd be pushing cows, and the neighbor came down on day 3 and asked how bad. I said, oh, it's no problem. I said, I think we pushed 1 cow. And he kind of looked at me, and no, it's a very easy to move cows when they can go in a straight line. They can see the cow leaving in front of them, and it's just a natural thing to follow.
With your vector system, is that feeding a TMR, or is that just feeding forage and the protein and minerals are coming through a pellet in the robot? It's
It's a TMR. I mean, we pull some stuff out that we feed in the robot. Cows go to the robot for feed, not to get milk. That's the first thing you got to understand when it comes to robots. Cows couldn't give a shit whether they get milk or not. They want to eat. And you could put that robot at the end of the road driveway, and if they knew the grain was there, they would go there. So once you get your head around that, and we feed corn silage, barley silage, alfalfa silage, and high moisture corn, and we feed a soybean byproduct, dried distiller's grain, and our mineral goes into the TMR, and also we feed molasses, liquid molasses as well. And that all goes automatically. And because of the way it's set up, everything has to be able to work at night when I'm sleeping. So you got to kind of set things up. You got to have bangers on your bins and stuff like that, so that otherwise you got to bang them, right? So you got to put a banger on the bin, because distillers doesn't always want to flow. Like there's things like that you as dairymen know how they work, and so already when you start, you've got to figure it out.
So on first cast heifers, how much box time do you eat up? like for the training process? Just because if you want to put
Okay.
in another robot.
Okay, like if you one of the things the robot does that will help you understand a little bit is when you got any diverted cow, it washes after that. So that eats up time, right? If you'd have what does the wash take? 2-3 minutes? But it all adds up, right? It does a local rinse but I would say you got to get her in there, right? You got to get her in there, and you got to attach. The first attachment can be a bit of a problem sometimes.
Another thing is on those first cows, you want to be watching them and fetching them. And when you're pulling those out of the main herd, you're going in a lot. And if you could have them all in their own pen, you would be disturbing the main herd a lot less. So if you can get a cow going on a robot that's in a group of people learning the robot at the same time, it'd be beneficial in the fact that you're not going around through the barn disturbing cows that are going regularly and you're not now there's a cow that's standing waiting to go in the robot, and now you're pushing a heifer in during when that cow wants to go. So every time you push up cows, you're disturbing the cows that are going regularly. So if you can pull those cows that you're training and stop pushing cows in those areas, then you are saving yourself a lot of time on the robot too.
Yeah, we like in February, March, we had almost no cows calving because of the way the fire worked and everything. We had those 2 months. We had almost no cows calved. Well, we was actually feeling like chicken farmers already, because there was really we didn't fetch cows. We didn't it ran very, very smooth. But it's once you start adding, and then what we found during our startup, we bought a semi-load of heifers, and then all hell broke loose again. Right now we have to put in gates again, and because we're running two sides, you put 35 heifers in there. Now all of a sudden 1/3 of the side is new, and you disturb everybody. So we ended up several times actually that we did that one side. We put the gates in and actually kind of did a semi restart. So, and that was some of the things. If you're running your own herd and everything, you had everything lined up, like all your calvings, and you just pop in a new barn, it'll be a lot easier than having to add such a big whack of heifers at one time.
So post-fresh pen that combines the robots would be advisable.
Well, especially if you're running 2 robots, it's maybe not feasible. But if you get into a 4 or 5 or 6 robot barn, I think it's definitely feasible. I think it makes a lot of sense. Your operation will just run much smoother, I think. Plus, never mind, now you can feed those cows separate, right? My nutritionist would love that. Who I should have introduced, by the way. Jack Reeb is here as well. He's really helped us with getting us going with the high moisture corn stuff. So, thank you, Jack. Yeah, he does our nutrition work, so he's been really good.
How long is the payback, do you figure, for the automatic milkers?
Well, we haven't run a full year yet somewhere where we can actually say that we've been full, but we're running half the staff we were running before. So we're saving, probably my guess is $100,000 a year on labor, and we're milking more cows. So, and I don't have to train workers all the time. So the payback on it, that's a tough question at this point. The savings on the vector, first of all, you can figure you're going to use 5% less feed, or probably your cows will eat more. You'll use the same amount of feed, but now the cows will be eating it instead of pushing it at the back door or feeding it to the heifers. So there's 5% there, right? Or it'll get you more milk, whichever way you look at it. There's a labor savings on the farm because we've got 2 or 3 now instead of 7 or 8. And then now we've gone from 2 times milking to 3.5 times milking, which also gains you. As far as maintenance on the robots, well, we run warranty till July, so that's hard to say what that cost will be. We're looking at talk as about $5,000 per robot per year, 5 to 6, depending on how much you do yourself. We like to do as much. I hate it when repairmen come in the yard because it costs me money. So we have Peter as our mechanic. He fixes whatever he can. We try to fix on the robot whatever we can. We try to be that way. We try to be as efficient as we can. So as far as payback on it, I mean, that's a tough. We've also gone from an old stanchion barn to a freestall barn where we gained a lot of comfort, and so ask me 5 years from now, I'll be able to answer that question a whole lot better. I mean, we had insurance bought my old barn, so right, so so there's many aspects to this thing that it's at this point it's still hard to say what it will do in the long run. But I know one thing is my cows are more comfortable, my cows are more relaxed, my breeding is way better than it ever was before. We don't use any prostaglandins anymore. We just breed. We just use our heat sink on the computers, and our conception rate is much better. So it sounds pretty rosy, but it is. I don't know if I answered that question well enough or not, but I tried. Or would you, or okay, okay. Something like that, yeah, 200, 250. That should be around 200. With your dollar, maybe even less. You got to drive them a little harder, these boys, eh?
Changing the subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering on the Vector how much it cost per day to operate.
I think $2. The 250 in power, electricity, hydroelectricity. We're in Manitoba, where our electricity rates are probably, I think, the lowest probably in North America, and we're running at I think $2 to $2.50 a day. Well, our diesel fuel consumption has just dropped incredibly. Like we used to run, we had a TM145 on a mixer and took 250 liters converted to gallons. Where's Brian Rodenberg? He can do that in a hurry, I noticed last night. 250 liters in 3 days. Divided by 4, that gives you the gallons, right? Now we got a cat payloader that uses a tank a month to cut blocks, right? So our consumption, diesel fuel consumption, is huge. I figured about $1,000. I figured about $1,000 a month saving just on diesel fuel, with using the Vector instead of a mixer wagon.
The first few installs that we had in Ontario, we hooked up power meters to the systems, and Ontario power rates are quite a bit higher, and they're running between $3 and $4 a day. Any other questions?
Just to bring it a bit into perspective, our hydro bill has stayed basically the same. Before we ran 104 cows tie stall, and we ran one robot on the side, one robot in our freestall barn, and we were spending about $3,500 a month on average on power. And now we run this whole barn with tunnel ventilation, 4 robots, the whole 9 yards, and our power bill has stayed the same. So the new stuff is also more efficient, right? Like when you build a new barn, your motors are more efficient. So that plays into it as well. But our power usage isn't higher, and we've saved, like in our budget, we used $1,000 a month on diesel fuel savings, and we're doing for sure that.
Any other questions today?
Tell us about the construction of the barn, how you've got a double line. Is it insulated to keep the scrapers running in the winter?
Okay, yeah, our barn is insulated. If you saw pictures we have on the east end is wide open. Jeremy, if you can find some of those pictures. The east end we can open right up for summer. They're insulated bifold doors. So for winter, like in here, for summer it's wide open, and we have 25 60-inch fans at the far end. So in summer we tunnel ventilate, and then in winter we put winter covers on the fans, on those 25 fans. Then we ventilate through the roof, and have intakes on the sides. But it's all insulated. The roof is insulated to R30, I believe. And we run, like I actually was a bit scared that we have terribly many square feet per cow in the barn. Like we have 18-foot pads, 14, 12, and 10-foot alleys. So you get a lot of space per cow, which now in winter you got to heat that space per cow, right? But we have, the air in winter I would say is very good. And we have, like we keep it at, now somebody will have to convert it for me, but no, -9 degrees Celsius. We keep it above freezing all the time. That's 50 degrees roughly in winter. And we don't have any problem with that. And we can still move air. Still move enough air to keep the air fresh. So we are a bit north from here, but not that much north.
And for those of you that don't know Manitoba, I'm from Wisconsin, so I know cold, but there's cold and then there's Manitoba cold. Yeah. So,
yeah. Bloomberg News did a piece on our place, and if you go and watch that video online, then you'll see the cold. They did a good job of capturing it.
Have another question, the crowd?
I have a question for Jeremy. Jeremy, maybe why don't you tell the folks how a day starts on your farm and what you do all day, and maybe give a little sense or a pulse on what's it like to manage the farm. I know you're the herd manager, and go run through a day.
Rich likes to embarrass me a little bit. So I get up at 9 o'clock. And you get to the barn, and usually the first thing you do is you take a peek at your computer and you see how your cows are doing. You can see on the computer, you see stats from if cows haven't been milking, or if they have high cell counts, if they have blood in the milk, all that stuff you'll have alerts on your computer that will tell you about that. So right off the bat, you can see things like that. If there's a cow in the night that's come down with a really bad case of mastitis, you can see all that stuff, and I'll check that all first. And then I'll usually go out and fetch my training cows, or if there's a cow that's lame or needs to be brought up manually, then I'll go and take care of that. And while I'm doing that, I'll also like clean the stalls as I go through the barn, and clean the stalls and take a look at those cows. If a cow is spiked on the conductivity and cell count, I'll go take a look and see if she's in need of treating. And then I'll push up all my cows, and then it's like 11 o'clock. So then I'll go and sit on the computer, maybe watch a couple YouTube videos. And then, you go out and you do your treating, and that's kind of your morning is investigating and making sure that everything is cleaned up from the night. So you'll scrape your stalls, you'll scrape your crossovers, you'll clean your robot lasers, and it's just kind of checkup time. And then usually your afternoon, now you have time to work on a project. If you're working on something like we're talking about we've been talking about lately building a calf facility for raising bull calves. So maybe in the afternoon, then we will go spend some time working on that, because now we have time to do stuff like that. And we have time to do little projects like that, or catch up on something that we missed, or go golfing or something like that. Very important farm business, either way. And then at around 4 o'clock, you'll do kind of the same, where you scrape your stalls, you check your cows, and you make sure that everything is running good for night. Because with robots, you can very easily avoid getting called at night, and that is by just checking things before you leave. If you're proactive with looking at your robots and looking at your hoses, looking at stuff like that, you can pretty much avoid getting called at night at all. So then you do that sort of stuff before you leave the barn, and you have a pretty good idea of what your night is going to be like.
If Dad gets up at night to clean a laser, he's very upset in the morning.
Yeah.
The boys hear about that. That's not necessary. If I got to get up because a cow kicked hoses or something and twisted them or whatever, that's one thing. But to get up at night to clean a laser, that's bullshit in my opinion. That doesn't doubt.
Yes. And along with, I mentioned a little bit about cell counts and treating cows. That is actually something that's also changed quite a bit in our new barn. Because in Canada we're allowed getting cell counters on our robots. You guys aren't quite allowed with that here yet, but we have cell counters on our robots, so we can see all our cows' cell counts every time they milk. With that information, you learn a lot about what mastitis does, and you can see very quickly that a lot of mastitis cases, the cow can actually fight off on its own very easily, and will do quickly. And in cases where I would have in the old tie stall where you're prepping and you find a little bit of stuff in the milk, and I would have just treated it right off the bat, now I can see with the cell count, okay, her cell count has not really spiked. Her conductivity's come up a bit, but her cell count's actually not looking that bad. I can say, okay, this cow is a cow that's going to recover from this by herself. And instead of giving her treatment and having that milk withhold time for the next few days, I just give her a milk separation for the day, just so that you're not getting that clumpy milk into your filter and into your tank. And then the next day, almost all the time, it's gone. And we've cut back on treating probably about 80% of mastitis treatment we've cut back on. And that's just because we can monitor our cell counts on a milking basis. Now you're not cutting out treating. Treating is, and in fact, you can actually see better when a cow needs to be treated earlier with cell counters, because you see the cell counts will spike before you'll even have your cell counts will spike before you even get a conductivity spike in your milk. So you can actually be treating a cow before you would almost even notice it in a barn without it. That's something that I've noticed quite a bit with the whole cell counters and that ability. Did I miss anything, Rich?
About how many fetch cows do you have in a day?
That is very, very depending on what's happening. When we were not calving at all and we weren't having heifers coming in, we had 2. Some days I wouldn't fetch cows. When you are running smoothly and you're not adding animals, it's very good. And then the only cows you're fetching are ones that are you need to look at anyway because they're lame or something like that. But when in the last 2 months we've been calving about 40 animals a month, then your numbers are looking a little bit different. I'm probably fetching about 10 to 15 animals a day, and those are heifers that are going on the robot for the first time. Heifers are the ones that you usually spend your fetch time on. A cow that's coming back after being through the robot, probably 1 out of 5 you'll have to fetch again. Most of them, once they're back in the robot, they're going. And often if the ones that don't go again, once again, they're the kind of cows that you need to be looking at anyway, and they probably had a rough calving. They probably are needing treatment or a little bit of extra care anyway.
Generally, you'll find that your second and third calvers, you'll push them in there, and you don't see them again until they come in heat, and or once they get tail off. One guy, when we were touring, one guy said to me, he said, "If I have to fetch cows, either they're not trained, it's time to dry them up, or they're sick." And I would say that holds very true once you're flowing. But it's interesting. When we were touring, and we visited 2 farms in one neighborhood, and the one guy didn't really fetch cows. His barn, he ran an incredible barn. I would say his management was out of 100, he was probably a 98 or a 99, and he didn't fetch, and his neighbor didn't fetch either. One fetched because he ran such a good herd he didn't have to fetch, and the other one didn't fetch because he didn't care. He was okay if they didn't want to come, that was fine. He couldn't be bothered. So that's just how people are different, right? But if you do a really good job, and that's one thing I'd say, if you're not a cow man, don't put in robots expecting that you're going to spend less time. The same with the calf feeder. If you don't like to look at calves, don't put in a calf feeder, because you have to spend time managing your animals. Building this whole thing, that's the easy part. It's running it that takes effort and takes work. and it's not, like it's different. Like we can now, we start later, we end, like we're not tied to that schedule. It used to be the schedule drove us. We had to milk because the evening milkers were coming, right? I mean, I think a lot of you know what that's all about. And now if we don't drive ourselves, things, well, because you can go to the barn and you can sit there, and not do anything because there's nothing that has to be done right now. So if you're one of those that needs the fire held to you to get going, then you might have some problems. But it's a management. It's about management.
Why aren't silk counters allowed in the States?
It just hasn't been approved yet. We're waiting for approval.
Yeah. Cell counters are an incredible tool. Like we debated it a little bit, but not very long.